answer right there. Welcome to the Midnight Mormons live stream. We got a couple of substitutes today. Quake Will's out of the studio, so I brought in my cousin.
What's up?
What's up? Dude, you're so small they can't even see your face, man. Yeah, there we go. Rock on. What's going on? And also, I got to get you. I got to get you on the screen here, Brad. Hold on. Where are you, my man? Where are you? Where you be? Where'd you go, Brad?
Stuck in the mainframe.
The gorgeous. There he is. The gorgeous Canadian with the beard,
Chad.
right there. How you doing, man?
Doing good. How about you?
Boom. Can't complain. We're also joined by none other than the illustrious Jim Bennet. He's gonna jump right in, not realizing that we're completely live. What's up, Jim? How you doing? Awesome. All right, dude. So, first things first. How we all doing today? Pretty good?
How's what?
How we all doing today? Pretty well?
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Yeah.
Ah, dude, can't complain. Complain. So, what a week is all I could say. Is what a week that we're going to talk to our we got so much going on right now. I thought we were literally just going to react and clown a little bit on Under the Banner of Heaven, and then we got the first leak of Supreme Court history that literally is like dividing our church in half by those that still worship the priests of Baal and those that don't.
Oh,
And
gosh.
so you know, and Jim's friends with all of them. So I feel bad for Jim at this point, you know, because it has got to be a tough existential thing for his role.
I'm your ambassador to the priests of Baal. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't want to be disrespectful. It's Baal.
Baal.
So, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. We got to remember
got
that little apostrophe. So, anyway, dude, let's start out with Under the Banner of Heaven. What do you guys think?
Well, let me just start by asking you this, Cardon. Mormon to Mormon.
Okay.
Do you not also constantly reference our shared faith every single time we speak to one another?
Brad,
Brother?
I have to stop you right now. You need to know the church vigorously discourages beards. So I'm really disgusted that you would fly in the face of the vigorous discouragement. Anyway, sorry.
That
Yeah,
was
okay.
painful. That was painfully bad.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I have a take on it that I think, I don't know. I've been reading a ton of commentary on it from other people to see where they're at and how they're understanding it and trying to gauge my own understanding of it. Just for starters, I'll say I think there's plenty of good acting in it. I think there's really good cinematography in it.
Yeah.
And I think that the dialogue ends up getting labored in trying way too hard to like convince people that they're watching Mormons, you know?
Yeah.
And so I feel like it could have been better if they hadn't done that, you know? Like I guess the writer in me, from everything that I learned at BYU, learning to write plays, I would get called on this sort of thing when I was writing, when I was kind of letting the theme overtake the actual story and the characters themselves. And I feel like that happened a lot in this show. From at least the 2 episodes I've seen so far, I feel like the characters they're not human as much as they are like thematically driven. And I think, honestly, that's kind of what the writer has said he tried to do anyway. So, yeah, I feel like I've seen reactions from people on both sides, people saying like, Mormons aren't like this at all, and other people being like, this is exactly how we are. And I feel like it doesn't really represent exactly how we are, but most people probably do know at least one person who has said at least one of those lines at some point, right? And so it's just seeing them all in the same place that is like too much for me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Like my deal was this, man. Like nobody likes that guy. Nobody likes that guy that's like, oh, the book was so much better than the movie. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, so none of us had the time to read the 5,000 pages that was Jurassic Park, even though I did actually read the original Michael Crichton novel, you know what I'm saying, which was better than the movie. But, you know, like none of us want to be that guy, okay? And no matter what, I mean, I work in Hollywood, right? No matter how well you try and represent a group, there's always going to be those dissidents and those people and those purists. They're like, oh, dude, like, that wasn't like authentic enough. You know, it's like when you go to some new restaurant in Provo. You know, there's always some missioner. It's like sleeping on the good Thai food because he served his mission in Thailand and he wants to look cool. And he's like, oh, you know, that was so inauthentic, which means tasty. You know what I'm saying? So like, I mean, I get that you can't always please the authenticity police, right? We keep losing Jim there. It's actually kind of funny. But anyway, you can't.
I'm here, live and in color.
Oh, rock on. Sweet. So you'll never appease the authenticity police. And I didn't want to be that guy that looks like he's screaming foul after Hollywood made a video. But my only real beef with this whole thing was, I think you're right. It seems like they discovered a vernacular and they tried to cram it all in to say like, see, we did some kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. Honestly, it seems like a bunch of ex-Mormons were getting all the things and the vocab off of their chest that they hated about their childhood growing up. And it made for an unwatchably bad piece of, I dare not say, cinema. Because I don't see how somebody who didn't hate the church or love the church would be interested in this past the first episode. They didn't get to the salacious murders until the last third of the first episode. They didn't, you know, nothing except for a bunch of odd speech was there. And it really seems like everybody that likes this likes it because it was meant to sleep on Mormons. But even if we're meant to sleep on Mormons, I don't think it was that successful out of sheer and absolute boredom.
Yeah, I mean, my problem with it isn't that it's mean to the Mormons or that it's bad religion. It's just bad television. I mean, I came into it wanting to enjoy it.
Me too.
And I actually was sort of I mean, I love Andrew Garfield. Who doesn't love Andrew Garfield? He's a marvelous actor. Everything suggested this was going to be really interesting, and I was waiting to be challenged. You know, everybody was like, this is going to really challenge your faith and challenge the assumptions of the Mormons and all of that. And within the first 30 seconds, I thought, this isn't very good. I mean, the minute you see these
the Orange Temple.
I wrote a long review about this that has kind of gone viral. It's been on Twitter. Somebody put it on Reddit. And I've spent the past few days sort of responding piecemeal to all of these people. And the one complaint they have with my review is I start by saying, look, the first time you meet Andrew Garfield and his family, you meet all these little girls in these very pioneer prairie, little house on the prairie dresses, and Andrew Garfield's playing with them like this is totally normal and this is exactly the way it is. Now, yes, it was Pioneer Day and those dresses were costumes, and there's a throwaway line that points that out, but it seemed very clear to me that the intent was to give this impression Mormons are weirdos. Mormons are just like the fundamentalists that you see when they talk about polygamists everywhere.
And the proof of that was the insinuation. Like, the opening 3 shots are rural Utah.
Right.
Okay. Suburban
the Provo
Utah.
Temple.
Yeah. And then they had, not the Orem Temple, you're right. The Provo Temple right across the MTC. So the thing is, like, I was actually looking forward to this. I actually really think there's serious questions to be asked about what religion does to the human mind and that power it wields. Like, and God knew this. Like, just like you, I actually wanted it to be good. I love Andrew Garfield. And I think Mormonism, or the history of the society generated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is rich with some really not touched stories. And the Lafferty murders is one of them. And I think God himself knew, look, as I give you this reconnection with God, which is what the term religion means, he made the third command. I think it's the third commandment is thou shalt not use the Lord's name in vain, right? Which, you know, we always boil down in Christianity to say like, oh my gosh, instead of, oh my God, you know?
No, I'm sorry. Mormons say, "Oh, my heavenly Father."
Oh, yeah, exactly. Something like that. You're right. According to Under the Banner of Heaven, they say, "Oh, dear heavens, my brother in Jesus Christ."
No,
my heavenly Father.
It's every. I mean, the one part where I really where my eyes rolled up into the back of my head.
Yeah.
Was the casual conversation where Andrew Garfield's talking to his wife,
okay,
and talking about an upside down cake, and says, "Oh, Heavenly Father knows you can't make an upside down cake."
Oh yeah.
I thought, like, nobody talks like that.
Yep. Yeah. It was kind of crazy. And just from what I saw, I guess something that came across to me that I really wish they had leaned into more was like, you get some really cool moments with Brenda's family, showcasing what Mormons could be like, right? And showing what this side of families in Mormons history look like versus the Laffertys, right? And I really, really wish that they had done a little bit of work to like show this dichotomy of what Mormonism can be based on who interprets it and how. But then they go so heavy-handed into the Lafferty guy, Alan Lafferty, saying, no, this is the truth of our church, right? Like, this is the truth of our religion. And like, you're wrong if you don't think this way. And then no one refutes it. Well, no one stands up to that at all. And so I feel like they could have it be so much more interesting if there was any sort of conflict there. But like, Andrew Garfield's character just kind of takes it and is like, oh crap, he's right. We're evil.
I mean, the thing that's so puzzling to me is I don't understand why Andrew Garfield took this role, because it's a completely thankless role as an actor. I mean, you have this fascinating real life story, and Andrew Garfield is playing a fictional character who isn't going to be able to be involved in the narrative that's interesting. All he gets to do is stand on the sidelines with a shell-shocked look on his face and narrate and provide exposition. And he's there solely so we can watch him lose his faith. I mean, the goal of this series is to watch Andrew Garfield just slowly but surely realize his faith stinks, and to stay proxy for Dustin Lance Black, who is the writer who went through his own faith crisis and lost his faith. But to me, I mean, there's some interesting questions, I suppose, to raise there, but in terms of dramatic potential and in terms of a meaty role for an actor to grab, I don't think that's very much fun. I think, I mean, Andrew Garfield's not going to get much to do in this thing.
So it feels to me like this show, ironically, has a really similar problem to the show God's Not Dead.
Oh, that's
where,
yeah,
it's so bad. It's unwatchably preachy, because it has its conclusion already, like in the premise of the show, and you really can't like go past, like you can't see any dramatic tension being raised because you know how it's going to end.
Right.
And I feel like this is doing the same thing. It's, you know exactly how it's going to end. You're watching him just like lose his faith immediately to some guy ranting about the Mountain Meadows massacre and other things, which like there are actual legit questions to address, but throwing him in this way.
Well, and it's just trying to do way too much, because the narrative comes screeching to a halt every time we go to a flashback.
Yeah.
And you know, and all of my arguments with people are like, well, this wasn't made for Mormons. This wasn't made for you. I'm like, well, really? Because we're the only ones who have any idea what's going on.
Yeah, we're the only ones that could understand the vernacular as presented. And even for us, it's like listening to Shakespeare. And it's like, I'm sorry, I was alive in the 80s. Like, I was alive in the 80s. People don't talk this way. What up, Will? What, you got something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say what you were saying, that it's not for, like, the Mormon people. Well, they're just trying to use it kind of as, like, fuel to kind of just, like, keep shoveling the fire. Just trying to keep the train going to get more people to leave the church.
Yeah, anybody that says the motivation behind this was not to make the church look bad and to provide entertainment is absolutely intellectually dishonest, because I don't think you can even decipher the language of this. It's without being a member. Like, you literally cannot understand this movie without being a member.
Here's the thing I want to point out. I think everyone involved in this actual production, right? Ron Howard's a producer on it, right? And
Jason
Andrew
Bateman.
Garfield, what?
Jason Bateman was one of the
Yeah, I
producers.
saw Jason Bateman was on there.
Like
yeah.
we have some really big name people who I think are getting involved in this. And this, like Dustin Lance Black is their only person that they know involved in Mormonism, right? So they're going to take him at his word. And I think they're trying to support him in doing something that is important to him, right?
Yeah.
Where it comes across to them as like, hey, we want to help this guy who we know is a really talented screenwriter to like bring this story to life, right? I think there's more of that on their end.
And I think the
than,
pitch
like,
meeting
really
was awesome. The trailer was 10 times better than the show. The trailer
Right.
was why we all watched, because whoever directed that trailer knew what they were doing. They insinuated immediately that there's been a heinous crime committed in a juxtaposed, perfect, sleepy Mormon community. Is there an aspect to some ancient faith and ancient ritual that was insinuated that could have motivated this? Is there an aspect of the Mormon faith that literally does accept or breed violence? Like, this is cool, salacious stuff. But you know what it reminded me of? So you sent me that that tweet from that guy, Dan McKinley, and I can't find it. I'm looking for it and I'm really frustrated. I think he might have erased it because he probably got slept on pretty hard. But he literally showed a picture of the Central Library in New York from like 1890 and then the Central Library now. And he literally said, like, godly societies breed beauty and strength. Our modern society is godless, therefore it has neither beauty nor strength, and nothing reflects that worse than its architecture. And it was this beautiful sprawling picture of the 1890s Central Library in New York City with its Gothic columns and its beautiful arches and its stained glass, and it was like literally gorgeous. And then it showed a picture from the entrance of the library that literally looked like somebody had carved out a hole in the side of the DMV and put a placard on it that said Central Library. It was like the most depressing thing, right? So I look at this and I think, you know, there's serious questions that could be asked if you actually are in a third party role observing the church. All right. Like God himself, I was saying this earlier and then we went down a rabbit hole, but God himself, I think knew when he was giving man religion, he knew its abusive power. That's why the third commandment is, do not take the Lord's name in vain. It doesn't mean don't say, oh my gosh, or oh my heavenly Father, dear brother. It literally means do not behave in the name of God while doing ungodly things. Like, so important was this idea that if I'm going to give you the power to act in the name of me, if I'm going to give you the priesthood, then my first commandment is thou shalt have no other gods before me. My second commandment is, I think it's no idols, right? And the number third is don't use this, you know, don't take my name in vain. So like, maybe it's just because I'm from Hollywood and maybe Jim understands this because he grew up here and stuff like that. But I love the entertainment industry. It's like when the Chinese say, find a job that you enjoy doing and you'll never work a day in your life. Like, right. I think the ability to work in film and television and radio, especially when you feel it in your heart and you want to be a writer or you want to be an actor, like that's not working. And the fact that you can get paid to do it, like having a job in entertainment, if you're an entertainment minded person, I think is the greatest blessing on earth. Right. And to use whatever funding Hulu had, whatever goodwill Jason Bateman had, because he, as an executive producer, he probably ponied up money for this. All right. Or else allowed social capital of his name to be used in order to leverage it with investors. You know, the massive 30 million potential blessing dollars that were put into this universe got wasted on a bunch of petulant consultants, okay, that decided to abuse the name of God, literally the name of the church, the culture of the church, the history of the church, as a chance to like do get back points on like vernacular you didn't like in the 1980s, instead of digging deep. And I know the Laffertys. That's the other thing. I know them. Like, hey, Will,
So,
you know the Laffertys, bro?
My sister actually babysits one of the Laffertys. I think it's like their son's daughters.
Yeah, dude,
So-
one of the younger brothers of the two murderers straight up moved to California.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
In our ward.
Yeah, like in our ward. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had no idea. I actually called him up one day asking if he was related, and Brad was there because we were going to do some homework on this. He's like, am I related? Yeah, that was my older brother, dude. You know, I was just like, holy smoke. I didn't realize I was that old and that my friends, it was actually kind of a nerve-wracking experience for me when I realized that there were people that were already in their 20s and the 80s that I knew raising my parents.
It's just crazy because, like, he's, like, the nicest guy ever. Like, when you go to his house, we helped him move one time, and he, like, wouldn't let us leave without him giving us something. So he gave me, like, a remote control helicopter. He was like, just take something. He's, like, the nicest guy ever.
Yeah, he's like literally probably one of the most humble and Christ-like guys I know. And I asked him, and he unashamedly gave me the raw, real story. I said, what's truth? What's fiction? What's this? What's that? And you know what? He was never reached out to. But Lindsay Hansen Park was. No one in his family that is still active was ever reached out to. But the oldest sister that's pushing, or the sister-in-law that's pushing the anti-death penalty activism and stuff like that, oh, she was a consultant on it, you know? At some point, I just wonder, like, who were these consultants, you know, and how do we take that back? Like, this is the reason why Mormon Discussions is labeled Mormon Discussions, and we kept this show labeled Midnight Mormons. And the reason why John DeLynn still calls it the Mormon Stories Podcast instead of the Anti-Mormon Stories Podcast, I literally think is just so that when the outside world ever wants to make a Mormon production or get commentary on a Mormon theme, they'll call the anti-Mormons thinking they're Mormons. You know what I'm saying? And nothing was better evidence of that. The fact that the only consultants they had on this whole show were all anti-Mormons. And unfortunately,
well, I think John DeLynn would have done a much better job sounding more authentic than these people did. I mean, it's not even that they don't sound like Mormons. It's they don't sound like people. I seriously, I compared it to the sand monologue in Attack of the Clones. You know, Anakin Skywalker's like, I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough. Not like you. You're so smooth. You know, when people crap on the Star Wars prequels, they always crap on on Hayden Christensen and say what a lousy actor he is. And I say, I defy you to find me an actor that can deliver that crap dialogue and sound like a human being. There isn't one. And you have so many moments in this series that are exactly like that. Andrew Garfield, I mean, you're not going to find a better young actor working than Andrew Garfield right now. And when he bursts into the room barking Doctrine and Covenants section 46 and quoting temple covenants, and I just sat there and I went, this is ridiculous. I mean, there isn't an actor on earth that could make this work. It has nothing to do necessarily with how it's representing or misrepresenting the church. It has to do, you know, I made the joke at the beginning here about your beard, Brad. You know, at one point there is a line. They're talking about these bearded men came in, and Andrew Garfield has to say, well, you know, the church vigorously discourages beards. And I'm like, well, first of all, okay, whether or not that's true, nobody says things like that. He'd say, yeah, Mormons don't have beards. I mean, that's a much better line of dialogue.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote this, and they're trying so hard to cram so much exposition that when you get to the flashbacks, it's like, you know, there was one flashback in the second episode. I wasn't going to watch the second episode. My wife was watching the first one and was like, let's keep watching. And there's a flashback to some guy talking about Ohio politics, and he had this cheap beard. And I thought, is this Cotton Eye Joe? Who is this guy? And I still don't know who it was. I don't know if it was supposed to be Brigham Young or somebody. But I thought, if I don't know who it is, and I know, you know, Mormon history a whole lot better than the average guy off the street, I can promise you that nobody watching this who isn't a member of the church has any clue who this guy is or why he matters or what the context is. And you have Joseph Smith looking at a hat, and I'm like, nobody's going to know. I mean, I have a hard time making some kind of association between that and these Lafferty murders. What's Joe Q. Public going to make of that? And it's just bad writing
and that
a bad representation.
Brad, go for it.
It comes back to the idea that I feel like they were writing for theme more than for the characters, right?
Right.
I've seen interviews where Dustin Lance Black says as much, that he was really trying to like create some fictional characters to really drive home the theme that he wanted to get across. Speaking of which, there are plenty of people I've seen saying stuff like, oh, this isn't trying to show that Mormonism is violent. It's just trying to like really show Brenda's story. And I'm like, yeah, but then why do they have the line, our faith breeds dangerous men?
Yeah.
They literally say that. Like, you're telling me this isn't supposed to be showing how
dude,
the church is violent?
Dude,
That's
I gotta tell you,
thesis.
I would love that to actually be a theme of conversation, because we, for example, have a Book of Mormon where Nephi, simply under the duress, and I shouldn't say the duress, but under the direction of the Spirit, lopped off the head of state with his own sword. Like, I mean, Nephi cutting off Laban's head in, like, you're only, what, 6 pages into the Book of Mormon before you get a God-sponsored assassination of a vulnerable state leader. It's like, what? I mean, these are deep moral questions, and it's justified in what? A Holy Ghost that says it's better that one man die than an entire nation dwindle in unbelief? Dude, let's unpack the crap out of that. Is it really better that one man die than an entire nation dwindle in unbelief? Does that actually mean that unbelief is worse than life? So is a spiritual life in the afterlife more important than a life here? That seems kind of hermetic and a little bit Catholic, like 7th century monasticism. Like, there's some deep questions to ask here. But just like that beautiful 1890s library was gorgeous, and now the modern one wasn't, it's like, Hollywood's gone woke and gotten broke. Like, we can't ask deep questions anymore. Yeah. Star Wars was profound. It literally asked, how hard can you push a man before he'll betray his friends? You know what I'm saying? That was literally like one of the questions you're asking in the Star Wars theme. Where should your loyalties lie? Like, you know, can you trust your own instincts over the machine when it comes down to dropping those bombs in the trash chute of the Death Star? You know, like, deep questions were asked by George Lucas here. Now we can only make Marvel movies and complain about patriarchal cultures with drive-by sniped cultural references. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. And the weird thing was, I tried to give it a review on Rotten Tomatoes, and this is why I don't trust it. Because, Jim, you said that everybody got angry if you didn't like it. And then you were getting a ton of flack online for your review. I tried to give a review on Rotten Tomatoes, and it wouldn't let me.
Really?
Oh, it's got a 95%. I tried 3 different times on 3 different computers to give it a 1 out of 5 star review. And I didn't even mention anything Mormon. I just literally said, like, I don't see how an outsider would find this entertaining, in the same way that sometimes, you know, self-serving autobiographies made by actors in their 60s, or preachy Christian, you know, God is dead movies that you wouldn't get unless you were literally an evangelical Christian. Like, they were exclusionary, and I didn't find it interesting. I could not put that review on Rotten Tomatoes, and it still has a 93% last I checked. On Rotten Tomatoes, which just like, they were sleeping on Dave Chappelle saying his Netflix special was like a 0%. And then finally, when they got caught for not allowing regular people to make reviews, you know what I'm saying? It skyrockets to like 99% audience score, while it's like 1% critic score, you know?
One thing I also want to say is, I looked on 3 different sources right now, and you cannot find how much they spent at all on this series and it's targeting the church. We all know that, because it's just fuel, and you just can't find anything on how much they spent to just absolutely just try and destroy the church as much as they can.
Yeah, I would be hiding this money, because I don't think it's as popular as the establishment's trying to make it be. Like, you've got your ear to the railroad tracks, Jim. Do you think it's popular?
I don't know, but I don't think so, no. You know, it's interesting. You talk about Rotten Tomatoes, man. I don't know if there's some huge monster conspiracy keeping you from putting up a review. I'm always kind of, I roll my eyes at a lot of that stuff, and I don't know if it matters.
Sure.
But the critic score is fairly high, and which surprised me, because when I watched it, I went, I can't imagine critics would like this. And it's interesting because the critic scores are high, but then when you actually go in and read the review isn't really that positive. Every single reviewer notes that I didn't know what to make of these weird flashbacks. I got lost. I got confused. I wasn't quite sure.
Let's talk about those weird flashbacks. It was like a cheap student film trying to do a periodic piece.
Oh, yeah.
I was confused by that. I was like, man,
Like that weird dog scene?
Yeah, how did they end up that way? Like everything else is so good. Why was it so it looked like they were trying to make it look bleak, you know? Yeah. I don't know what it was, but something about the way that they lit it was weird, and I don't know if they were doing that to like try to get the vibe to feel weird.
Like if they would have actually cut to the Mountain Meadows massacre and actually retold this story as we've basically forensically been able to piece it together, it would be a searing indictment of 1860s pioneer Mormonism and the question of how deep into the zeitgeist the concept of blood atonement actually got. But they didn't do that.
You cut to some guy who looks like
he was supposed to be Joseph Smith, right?
Game. I mean, you cut to a guy in a terrible costume. He looks like it comes out of the Stratego board game.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it doesn't look like a person. And we see that shot several times, and it's like, did you know what this guy found at the Mountain Meadows Massacre? And they never tell us. They're teasing it, but it's just like, it's disconnected, it's disjointed, and it's also inaccurate. I mean, at one point he mentions that it's in 1859. Mountain Meadows Massacre was in 1857, and that doesn't matter necessarily.
Yeah, to be fair, he was referencing when they discovered the site, which is right.
Which was 2 years later. Okay,
yeah, which was 2 years later, and like that was decently accurate. That portrayal of like, hey, that's what that guy described he found, but no one knows who he is, and like especially not outside of the church, no one's gonna know who that guy is. You do get the emotional impact of him finding like dead bodies, right? Yeah. And having Mormons at fault for it. The thing that was really weird to me was when they went on this weird spree of Joseph Smith apparently having made up the first vision to impress Emma.
Yeah,
is what it felt like. Like, what was that? Like, where on earth did that come from? Like, I feel like they just used "No Man Knows My History" and then like extrapolated from there.
Make a mistake that ridiculous.
Well, and also like, here's the deal.
Even Fawn Brody would.
This is where the director in me comes out, and I want to know what you guys would have thought about this. Screw the first two-thirds of the movie; they were garbage. How cool would it have been if we opened up with the opening scene of Andrew Garfield getting called to the crime scene? Screw trying to stuff all of the weird Heavenly Father references into the vernacular, the girls with the bad dresses, and then all the establishing shops of mainstream Mormonism while we use weird fundamentalist speak from the middle of, like, you know, Colorado City or something, okay? Had they actually said, we want to entertain people, I would have started with the rough and gritty scene where there's the cop that's sitting down and then he comes out and he's like, no, you need to stand up. Like, we need to be strong right now. Like, you need to go get those fingerprints. You need to see what's going on. And then juxtapose that with some of these old scenes of Joseph Smith or finding the Mountain Meadows Massacre people just killed, so that we immediately recognize that this is a historic parallel. Is somebody saying that this modern murder is exactly, you know, inspired by the Mountain Meadows Massacre, and then slowly tell the story of both in a creeping manner in those first 15 minutes. So we are hooked. Like, but I forced myself to get through that first episode, and I didn't get anything remotely compelling, gritty, or convincing that made me want to keep watching until I looked at the time. It was like 33 minutes in. I can't get people to watch our YouTube live streams for 3 minutes if I don't provide anything interesting at the beginning. And these people expected an audience to hang on for 33 minutes. It was a waste. And I'm actually more pissed. I wished it would have been anti-Mormon, but good.
Right.
Had they actually done that, had they actually had a rough and intense scene where they just unabashedly and without any qualms compared modern Mormonism, at least, you know, the Lafferty murders, to being justified through a weird book by an ancient pioneer that believed in blood atonement and then figured out if the modern church still condones that. Had they just straight gone anti-Mormon, I could have at least watched it and laughed in a way that you watch South Park. I know the cartoonist is going to hell, but at least he's entertaining us along the way, right? No, I'm just kidding. I don't think he's going to hell. But, and that's only because we don't believe in hell. But anyway, no, I'm totally just kidding. I'm totally kidding. But it's like, I
actually love the South Park Mormon episode, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I'm just joking. But it's like, I wished it would have been good in an anti-Mormon way, so at least it was good. But when
maybe maybe it will get better. You know, I feel like I hope that it gets better as it goes on for the
Did you
next
see the
couple of
second
episodes.
episode?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it will, because the thing that comes back to, for me, this isn't even really about the murders. You know,
Yeah.
it's
That's
about
the thing. That's
yeah,
exactly
it's about the detective losing his faith,
right.
which is
Brenda Lafferty's murder is an afterthought.
Yeah.
In her own story. I mean, that's pathetic storytelling.
Like,
Regardless of what religion you are, that's terrible, terrible storytelling. And that's what makes this thing unwatchable. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're great.
I'm with you 100%. I mean, that's the thing that frustrates the heck out of me. I mean, they're not interested in the murder, Cardon. I mean, when you talk about opening with the murder and opening, I mean, we don't get and I think it would be so much more compelling, not if Andrew Garfield were a Mormon who's they're trying to make look more like the fundamentalists, but if Andrew Garfield were a normal guy, so that non-Mormons watching this go, hey, Mormons are kind of normal guys. But then as this goes on, you discover, but really underneath, maybe they're not. That's a much more dramatic, interesting thing to do. But at the outset, they distance the non-Mormon audience from Andrew Garfield and say, this man is not like you. These people are not like you.
And then what's up with all these weird Lamanite references? Like when the guy that goes in, who's from the Spanish Fork PD, goes in to talk to the BLM guy or whatever, he's like, oh, he doesn't even look up. And then he makes some kind of passing Lamanite reference. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, but like, that is the most inauthentic. Like, even if the guy were blatantly racist, I don't know a bureaucrat in the park rangers that would not make eye contact while literally shining and polishing a gun. You know?
Right.
And then a guy walks in who's like, I know I might have a different skin color than you, but I believe murder's bad. Like, what is it? It was seriously, like, I don't know who we're giving awards to anymore. I didn't see Milk, and I feel like I need to watch it. So, but I don't know if Milk was just a movie that was given a bunch of awards because of the political content, and it might have actually been very poor. Because if this is Dustin Lance Black's writing, you know what I'm saying?
It's just
preachy
bad.
Student film lines, then I don't think he's that talented. And we're all just clapping for things he writes like Trained Bark Seals because we know he's gay and ex-Mormon and hates the Mormon church. So it's like, I want to go watch Milk so I don't have to say that, so I can make a complete and total, you know.
Well, didn't he write for Big Love too?
Yep.
Well, yeah, but like the only credits we're giving this guy is because he's writing anti-Mormon or else tangentially Mormon mocking content.
Well,
and it's like, that
I
make
remember
you
seeing,
good.
I've seen one episode of Big Love.
Was it good?
I don't really remember what happens in it. I also watched the temple scene that they did for Big Love, you know, but I watched one episode and I remember thinking, okay, this bears no resemblance to the church. This bears no resemblance to polygamy as I've seen it practiced by fundamentalists. And it's supposed to take place in Sandy, Utah, where I live. And this looks nothing and feels nothing like Sandy, Utah.
It was literally filmed in a warehouse 3 blocks from my house. It was a warehouse 3 blocks from my house, and it had the same lighting as, like, you know, in that scene in Aliens 5 or whatever where they're supposed to be in the forest, but it's obviously plastic trees and a soundstage. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like really bad. That was kind of like Big Love. I haven't seen enough Big Love except for
but I remember thinking. I'm actually going to say something nice because I remember thinking, okay, this is completely inauthentic. It makes no sense, but it's kind of entertaining.
But there
and
was
these
some
are interesting
entertaining
people. Yeah. And I kind of enjoyed watching it, you know.
Mm-hmm. And maybe there's going to be that aspect of that for this show, you know, where people who just like true crime sort of stuff will be interested in, like.
Name one series that has 2 unwatchable opening episodes that ends up taking off. Like, all 3 of us were hoping this would be cool. Because let's face it, like, Kwaku loves it when people think that we're crazy people that almost might murder you in case you disagree with us. You know what I said? Like, Kwaku actually wears that bad rap, like a badge of courage, not a badge of courage, but a badge of honor, right? But to a certain extent, he's kind of right. Like, I mean, no press is the worst press. I'd rather have Mormons are crazy press. The worst press is Mormons are boring. And that's what I'm really afraid has happened here. We're going to address just a couple of super chats really fast.
Yeah, hit him.
There was a movie. Okay, so AJ, the LDS Political Theological Talk Show, there's a YouTube handle for you.
Yeah.
Says there was a movie called The Cokeville Miracle, which was about a former member who believes he will be reincarnated with the children he was holding hostage. This was a faith-promoting movie. Will, you're raising your hand. Why?
I have watched this movie before. So this movie...
Was it cool?
It was a good movie, actually. So, yeah, it was somebody that kind of believed in reincarnation. So what they did... Do you want me to spoil the movie a little bit?
No, just tell me whether you thought it was good or not, and then we'll go back to talking about this.
It was good. It was really good. I thought it was a really good movie, but...
Better than the trailer of Under the Banner of Heaven, or no?
It was definitely better because it's not about anti-Mormon. It's about making it that Heavenly Father helped kids get out of like getting killed or dying from a bomb.
Okay, cool. So do you think it was watchable by a general audience more?
Yes, it was.
Okay,
I think
cool.
It was more like, it wasn't even like Mormon based. It was more like just like faith based. It was just like just kind of like Jesus Christ, or like a spirit is helping you get out of this building.
Okay, so maybe we'll actually do a watch party on that one. Then we got Chris Hanna. Chris Hanna, what's up, Chris? How you doing, bro, Seth?
Oh, I know Chris Hanna. I went to school with him. Hi, Chris.
Really?
Yeah, I went to USC. If it's the same Chris Hanna.
I don't know if it is or not, but he's an intelligent and erudite friend, and an anti-Mormon, so I'm sure he's your friend. But anyway, no, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
He wasn't when we went to USC. He was a member of the church.
No,
so
actually, I think it's a different Chris Hanna. This one is actually a mutual friend that was introduced to us through Jonathan Streeter, and we appreciate that he is an emotionally and intellectually consistent person. He also has a good sense of humor and is a bodybuilder / rocker. So all things masculine got stuffed into one guy. And occasionally,
okay, maybe not the same guy.
Yeah,
so,
occasionally
sorry.
he comes on our show. Anyway, he says, "How dare you stream snipe Delin and Larson? Heavenly Father darn you for distracting me from more 2004 YouTube atheism." So I think that was an indictment of the modern anti-Mormon sphere, which actually it kind of, I guess we'll end talking about this Under the Banner of Heaven thing. Do you think this production is salvageable? And what do you think the net influence is going to be? The Book of Mormon musical had a wild cultural impact on Mormonism.
And a positive cultural impact on Mormonism
You
overall,
think so?
I think.
Okay.
Because the Book of Mormon musical, people related to it. It was irreverent. It had all kinds of problems with it. But the church's brilliant decision to put an ad in the playbill. You've seen the show, now read the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Missionaries would stand outside and pass out Book of Mormons, and I think ultimately it had a positive impact. I think this is going to have the same impact that September Dawn had on the church. And my guess is that you're all going, what's September Dawn?
Was that about the intellectuals that got excommunicated?
No, September Dawn came out in 2007. It had a fairly big pedigree, and it was about the Mountain Meadows Massacre.
Oh, yeah, that was the one where Brigham Young was played by Angelina Jolie's dad, John Voight.
No. Well, no, John Voight played John D. Lee.
Okay.
And Terrence Stamp, General Zod, played Brigham Young.
Yeah.
And I have never seen it. Neither has anybody else. But it was another sort of ham-handed, the Mormons are the worst. and it was panned up, down, and sideways by critics. This has gotten much better reviews than that ever did. But this is going to sink the same way. I don't think... there are people who hate the church who are watching this, and it's become a sort of reverse litmus test. If you say this isn't it's good television, you're somehow defending the church. I have an atheist friend by the name of Dan Beecher. He has a podcast called Thank God I'm Atheist, which he needs to change to Thank Heavenly Father I'm Atheist.
Do that.
But he wrote this review where he says, look, I read Jim Bennett's review and I thought Jim Bennett's biased, but I watched this. This was terrible. This is not good. I just think that there is a core of people that are latching onto this who feel like their story is finally being told, and feel like this is finally going to bring down the church. It's not going to, it's just going to, it's already, I think.
Well, it's just more proof
have as
that
much of an impact as it's ever going to have.
To me, this is just more proof that all of the criticisms of the church are against this weird straw man that only exist in ex-Mormon, anti-Mormon circles online.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've never heard as a promotional story of Joseph Smith in my life that like he believed in or saved a slaughtered dog, or that like he bamboozled. Like, I mean, had they, like, I think the Mountain Meadows Massacre, as we historically know it, and as is often talked about in church, is a good starting point for an indictment of what can happen if, you know, unchecked, people are breaking the third commandment. Like, so I'm comfortable with a film about the Mountain Meadows Massacre. I would produce one. I would make one. I think
the church sponsored a book called Massacre at Mountain Meadows that is devastating. No punches, and you read it and you don't come away thinking they don't whitewash it at all.
Yeah.
Richard Curley,
you don't leave going, Brigham Young did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
You leave like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
What was
like,
this?
This is our darkest hour. I mean,
Yeah.
you confront it head on. And that book is so compelling because nobody's snarling with snidely whiplash mustaches at the outset. They start out, these are decent people that inexorably sort of move toward this terrible, violent act.
And when you operate out of fear, violating your own faith that teaches you to operate out of faith, we notice that when we act like the world and we operate out of fear, we are capable of heinous crimes. When we operate out of love and from a place of faith, we are capable of amazing, beautiful acts. Like, is that not the essence of the gospel? That man is a derivative of God. He is of divine in his origin, which means he is capable of supernatural evil like Cain, or capable of supernatural good like the prophets of old. Which do you want to be? It's generally based off of personal decision making, and you will be held responsible for those personal decisions when you are judged by God. So let's do our best to make good judgments. Like,
and so this is something that I feel like would have been really cool to see in the show, is like people's attitudes towards God and how they like feel about him from different aspects of Mormonism. Because one thing I've seen from people defending the show is like, hey, it portrays all of these different kinds of Mormons, like Brenda's family versus the Lafferty family versus Andrew Garfield's family of Mormons, and then the Relief Society people who are in there. And I think if you really are looking for it, you can see that, but the show definitely doesn't highlight those things. But I am glad that people are noticing those things. Like, everyone grew up with something slightly different in their experience of the church. But
nobody grew up with that, the way they talk in Under the Banner of Heaven.
Yeah. Because I feel like it crams all of it into 2 episodes so far, right? It crams all of those things into one place, where even if you heard someone say those exact words line for line, it doesn't sound authentic. It doesn't sound real, you know, because it's just in this, so many of those things are said in a row that it loses its touch with reality.
And I love what you said about Jim, or maybe it was Brad. You're both so smart. I don't know who brought up this good point, but you said, like, this is why some Christian cinema is so bad. Like, when you get preachy or, ununderstandable. The New York Times is written for supposedly a 5th grader's reading level, because that's what you really have to do to try and appeal to the most amount of people possible, and I as a person who oftentimes I'm fiscally liberal but socially conservative, and I'm oftentimes talking on a lot of political talk shows. And one of the, just to be intellectually honest right now, one of the things I hated as a person that's generally more socially conservative, one of the criticisms I hated during the Hillary Clinton campaign was all these different accusations that were heaped on her, right? And at a certain point, I just told other co-hosts, like, I agree with you on a lot of these issues, but at some point, we can't literally accuse one woman of everything. Like, she couldn't have been in Syria trying to talk to CIA operatives to start chemical weapons there while drinking blood in Cincinnati, while planning to overthrow the Capitol Hill police guy, while smuggling money through the Clinton Foundation down in Florida. Like, and I think I think there's a
and run a pizza restaurant.
Yeah, and run a pizza restaurant simultaneously. And I think there's bodies buried in unmarked graves around the Washington D.C. area that she probably had something to do with, right? But just like Bill Burr said, she can't be guilty of every single crime accused of her, or else she couldn't walk down the street without having a heart attack, right? So like, at some point, the average layman has to realize, no, there's not a jihadi on earth, a religious zealot on earth, or a fundamentalist Mormon on earth that could use so much painful vernacular or feel compelled to religiously without just exploding. Like,
right.
Like, I don't know. It just, and I don't see a way that gets conveyed to a layman. I don't see a way that a layman would believe that these characters are believable.
Just watch the next anti-Mormon thing that comes out. It's gonna be Dreadlock on why Mormons are witches.
Yeah. Dreadlock on why Mormons are witches. Okay, cool. So the last thing. Oh, sorry.
One thing I do want to say is I just think it's funny seeing people who are like Jim was saying earlier, saying anyone who criticizes the show is like, you're just trying to defend the church. It's like, are you're really that flat? Like, do you really think things are that black and white? Is that how black and white we all think? I don't think it is. I think we can talk about things that legitimately didn't work out right in the show and have it be something that we talk about. Like, but I saw this from Dustin Lance Black too. He said, this is a quote from him in an interview he was doing. They'll come for me, and if I actually got something wrong, I'll admit it. But we worked incredibly hard not to. But frankly, their criticism is inevitable. That's a part of who Mormons are.
You see the chat.
But this isn't a good final word. But they got so many stupid things wrong.
Yeah,
they didn't explicitly say it, but they firmly implied that BYU was in Salt Lake City. And why would you do that?
And this is why all of these postmodern arguments are so bad. Like, you read that book, White Fragility, and it literally says, for you not to be a racist, you need to be an anti-racist. And the number one sign of racism, if you're white, is saying that you're not a racist. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it creates this damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario where they just have complete and total power over you because they say, if you defend yourself against the evil accusation, that's evidence of the evil accusation. And so now it's like, the church is evil. It's evil and it hides people and it beats women and it, disappears folks. And when you say, no, that's actually not true, that is evidence. You know what I'm saying? It's like the same way that they defend mostly peaceful protests is the same way that they defend bad cinema, is the same way that, like, I don't know, I'm at a point now, this is where this is going, okay? I'm at a point now where I'm unironically going with Kwaku down to Scientologist headquarters just to see what it's like and have the experience for myself. You know what I'm saying? Because I have grown to distrust the analysis of these people about what is truth and how you should behave, that unless I hear it directly from the source of the Sea Org dude down on Sunset Boulevard, I don't know if I can believe what Hollywood tells me, because I know they have such an absolute extreme. Unless you are a progressive Democrat, you are a bad person who is an NAZI that hates women and is racist and bigoted. And it's just like, I cannot trust a thing these people say now.
Yeah. And one thing in the comments, Mormon Book Reviews, which is run by a guy named Stephen Pinnaker. Yeah. He's an evangelical guy. He says, as an evangelical, I am very critical of the series. And so, like, there you have it. Like, you don't have to be a Mormon to see something wrong with the show. And
you can be intellectually consistent in despising the church and despising this show at the same time.
Dude, hey, I love these comments. By the way, it says the Watergate break-in was planned by Jim Bennet's father. See Watergate and the Salt Lake Messenger. Sweet. Yeah. Are you part of a national conspiracy, dog?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was crap. Was that real?
Me. I can go into that all you want.
Was truth found online? No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I don't know if that makes you cooler or not.
If you watch the movie All the President's Men, Robert Redford, the first phone call he makes is to an actor playing my dad.
Get out of town.
No. And in fact, my dad's
Is this good or bad? Like, was I just saying get out of town to something bad or good?
I don't know. I think it's great. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it reminds me one time we were doing this big genealogy project in our stake, and all these people were talking about this interesting stuff that they found because we had to spend a couple hours in the genealogy library. But there was this girl that was like a convert that brought her friend, and the only thing her friend found was a prison record for a great uncle who ended up being the first serial murderer of Missouri that killed 12 people. So she found out she didn't get some great uplifting story like I did, like Clara Barton, founder of the American Red Cross. Oh, by the way, you're a descendant of Charlemagne of France, or all this other cool stuff that most people walk away with. She found out her closest living relative was the first serial killer in Missouri.
That's awesome.
It's so bad.
No, my people thought my dad was Deep Throat for a very long time.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, I wanted to write a book called My Father Deep Throat, and
would that get picked up at Deseret Book?
Yeah. But then the real Deep Throat came forward and ruined everything, so it's just screwed the whole thing up.
Dude, we got to do a podcast on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, Dad has great stories. I have some fun. I took a dump in Howard Hughes's pool. That's worth a podcast, isn't it? So
that's awesome.
Dude, that soundbite forever exists. Dude, Jim, when I make millions in Hollywood, dog, I'm working on my second million right now. The first one didn't go so well, but I'm working on the second million. So anyway, I will literally find a way to sue the rest of your family into purchasing your gravestone, and it will say Jim Bennet. It'll have the date of your birth, the date of your death, and it'll have a quote. I took a dump in Howard Hughes's pool. That is the straight up epic, dog.
Are we done?
No, you can say it. Finish it off. We got I don't know.
Very, very quickly. 1972 Republican National Convention in Miami, Florida. And we got to stay in Howard Hughes's personal residence because Dad was Howard Hughes's PR guy. And there was an indoor swimming pool, and my brother was explaining to 3-year-old me that when you pee in a pool, there's this thing called chlorine that makes the pee go away. So I thought, well, if it works for number 1, of course it must probably works for number 2. So I let it rip, and I remember watching it float away and thinking, didn't work. And they ended up draining the whole pool. It was a full-on Caddyshack moment. They scrubbed the whole thing down. Howard Hughes is this huge germaphobe, but he had never been in that house, and I made sure he never would be in that house. So there you go.
That's awesome.
Okay, before we go,
I have one thing I want to throw in.
Yeah, hit it.
Okay, think about it like this. One thing that has always bugged me about this book, it was written in 2003, right?
Yeah.
2 years after September 11th.
Okay.
Feels kind of like Krakauer was trying to critique fundamentalist religion in general, but was too much of a coward to go after Muslims, so he just used Mormons, right?
Mormons is proxy for Muslims.
Exactly. And so thinking about it like that, can you imagine if they made a show trying to prove that fundamental Islam led to violence, and they did not consult a single active Muslim on the show?
Yeah.
Can you imagine how people would immediately see through what that was? Right?
Even let them watch it after the fact. Any one of us, anybody would watch it and go, that sounds ridiculous. And BYU's in Provo, and senior missions are 18 months, not 2 years. And, just stupid stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, when you make dumb mistakes like that, it doesn't matter much in terms of the plot. But if your goal is to indict an entire faith, an entire religion, and you can't even get stupid little details like that right,
it undermines your credibility
on the big stuff.
Yeah, maybe this is really, I think this is actually really good for us in the sense of the Mormon versus ex-Mormon, anti-Mormon argument. Like, Kwaku said it really well one day. A friend of his came up to him and said, "You guys are architectural terrorists." And he was like, "What's that mean?" And he said, "You go around the world and buy up the best plots of land and then put up these big, beautiful buildings. And everybody drives by and says, that must be gorgeous. Can I go see what it looks like inside?" And then you say, "No." You know what I'm saying? Like no, you're not a member, right?
Technically, if you go to my dad, since, I mean, he works stuff. And so there's actually open houses for, like, the government officials and stuff. So in Washington, D.C., they just rededicated the temple, so you can actually have people go through.
Rock on. So if you're lucky enough to know a kid whose father is a temple recorder, you might get a slip in through the back door. But speaking about the back door, there's actually tunnels underneath the LA temple that are freaking sick. It's like straight up.
So
oh yeah, it's rad. It's like Soviet bunker style, you know?
Yeah, so my dad's actually been to the top of the Angel Moroni.
Yeah, it's actually, we got to do that. I think we'll actually do a live stream from, like where we take pictures when they re-guild the Angel Moroni on top of the LA temple. He's the only like Mayan or South American Moroni. He's dressed differently. He's not in the robes. He's like in like cool garb. And,
interesting.
There's so many high-powered rifles that take shots at him at the top of the LA temple. Like there's like chunks missing. You know, it's like every 2 or 3 years they have to take him back down and like fill in the little chunks in the statue from like people shooting at it with like guns and stuff. And and then they have to re-gild it and put like the gold back on and stuff like that. So, but it's pretty sick.
Can I share one last story for Jim?
Hit it. What, bro?
I did swim for 1 year. Probably will be the last every year that I'll do swim. But I remember that there would be kids that just didn't want to do swim. So they would go earlier that morning and they would chuck a Snickers bar in the pool so that they would have to cancel everything because they would take out all of the water and they would clean everything, and it was just...
ask your father to show you, not the whole movie, but there's a scene from the movie Caddyshack that you have to watch.
I love it. I love it how my 11-year-old cousin now is going to go home. And
this is your cousin. I didn't realize you were...
Yeah, this is my cousin. I love it how he's going to go home and he's going to boil down this this experience he had with a guy who's an erudite politician, a guy that wrote the best response to the CES letter. I think you're related to like Heber J. Grant or something like that. And apparently your dad orchestrated Watergate. You pooped it.
He may have shot JFK, but he may have been. I'm not.
You're not sure if he shot JFK or not. That actually is. Yeah, we're gonna have to podcast with you more.
No,
but I love how it's been. Actually, at this point, I think he did, and we're gonna add it to the list. But at this point,
I'll be here.
You have been boiled down to the dude that pooped in Howard Hughes's pool.
I can live with that. I mean, not everybody gets that much glory in one life.
Yeah.
If that's what's written on my tombstone, I'll die a happy man.
Okay, so we're off in 2 minutes, guys. If you have any super chats, get them out of your system.